Welcome to the Mindset Game podcast. We have a very special guest with us today, Dr. Adriana James. Dr. Adriana James is a nationally recognized master trainer in the fields of neuro-linguistic programming, also known as NLP, as well as hypnosis, timeline therapy, and NLP coaching. She was trained by Dr. Tad James, one of the pioneers in this field of human potential and performance. She then opened her own NLP training company in Sydney, Australia, and continued her studies in alternative modes of consciousness, for which she received a Ph.D. She is the published author of several books, including Timeline Therapy Made Easy and Values and the Evolution of Consciousness. And she is the co-founder of the Tad James Company, where I was trained as an NLP trainer. And I'm very honored to have you here with us, Adriana, because you truly are an expert in these fields. Thank you for taking the time to be with us today. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
So would you be willing to start us off with a little bit of your life story and how you got to doing what you're doing today?
Oh, that's an interesting story, although it's not unique. It can happen to everyone. And I think that at different points in people's lives, they all experience a turning point the way I experienced. So I was a very successful violinist. That's my master's degree, first in violin performing classical music. And I played at a beautiful building in Sydney, Australia, at the Opera House. And looking from outside, you would think, what's wrong with that? I mean, she's got it all and it's very successful. I became, the concertmaster of that orchestra, which is the top position. And yet I was not happy. I was not happy. I felt like everything in my life was wrong. Those people were wrong. My relationships were wrong. My friends weren't right. When I say everything, because I like to do things really well. When I start down a certain path, I like to be the best I can be. I mean, I'm not ever shooting for perfection, but I like to do my best always. When I serve people, I like to serve people well. Anything I do, I like to do the best I can. And so imagine this, Vered, me complaining. So I was complaining well. And so one day I went to have a tarot, depending on which country you are in, reading, because I wanted to know at that time what's going to happen in my future. We all begin going down that path at a certain point. Not all, but many people. And so the lady that was supposed to give me the tarot reading was late, was having something else. And so this other lady was there. So I was waiting in a mind, body, and healing building where there were lots of practitioners of energetic practitioners, yoga, different types of trainings, little trainings going on, and so on and so forth. And funny enough, that's where I started to do my first trainings after I became an NLP trainer. And so this other lady came and talked to me, and I complained to her, and I complained really well about everything I was not happy about in my life. And I think this lady had the patience of an angel, because after about 45 minutes of me complaining and telling her this was wrong and that was wrong, all my fears, all my anxieties, all my worries, and so on and so forth, and who doesn't, by the way, have anxieties, fears, and worries, especially nowadays, but imagine even then, she asked me one single question, which was an NLP question, but I didn't know at that time it was NLP. And she said, okay, I hear you say what you don't want anymore, what you don't like in your life, what's wrong? What would you like instead? And my mouth opened very, and I was like this. And something very hazy, fuzzy came out. And it was kind of sort of like more happiness, better life. Now, once I learned NLP, I realized that more happiness says nothing. How much more? An ounce more? What does it mean, a better life. What specifically does that mean? Because I didn't know in specifics. And that very event led me to NLP, led me to timeline therapy, led me to learning hypnosis, and later on NLP coaching, and led me to this new path. And I don't think I've ever done anything better in my life. Oh, maybe marrying Ted James. because I had this, I'm in a privileged position to have lived with a man for 21 years now. And I learned, I mean, he's teaching everything. He always was teaching everything. It's not like he ever kept secrets from his students. And, 37-year-old career is a long time. But I learned something else by just living with him, which is the way he thinks. And I learned to think the same way. And to think on the fact that, speaking of timeline therapy, which is Ted's creation, and now, I'm privileged, in a privileged position, as I said, to understand the thinking behind timeline therapy, is who doesn't have negative emotions? Who doesn't experience frustration, even anger? Who doesn't experience sadness? Who doesn't experience depression, anxiety, fear? These are things that people experience, especially with the massive change that happens in the world nowadays because of the health crisis, which is worldwide, because of the problem with jobs which are not the way they were, with the lockdown, because of the COVID situation and all this stuff. Who's not worried? Who's not? I mean, we all experienced it to a certain degree. However, one thing that I learned, which I think it's worth sharing with all your audience, and you know this very well, Vered, because you are doing an excellent job in sharing this and teaching this as much as you can, is the fact that people don't have to stay prisoners of their negative emotions. People don't have to stay prisoners in a state of fear. And here is why. When you are in a state of fear or anxiety or permanent worry, number one, is not good physically because your adrenals get overtaxed and then it's not bad for your health. But secondly, the interesting thing that happens is the fact that you can't even think clearly in order to find a solution. Even if there are opportunities coming toward you, even if, and there are, by the way, even if there are things that you could do, you can't take any action. It's almost like the old saying, fear paralyzes you. And so I learned through timeline therapy, and I've seen generations and generations of students. I'm already been in the field for quite a while now. Generations of students and coaching clients that I had personally. And I know, Vered, you know this very well. People who get paralyzed by fear. They are stuck. They know that they should do something, and I'm using the word should advisably, but they can't even get themselves to move. It's almost like the old saying, fear paralyzes you. And the secret behind timeline therapy is that it doesn't have to be that way. You can be free of fear and anxiety. And when you are free and you are not in that state, you can find solutions and you can think of solutions that before weren't obvious. So in other words, you are reaching deep down inside you and also outside you in the world, and you can observe and have strategies and behaviors which are very different compared to when you are virtually stuck and you cannot move in a negative state. That's what I learned from timeline therapy, that you don't have to be prisoner of your past negative emotions, or in the case of anxiety, of your future negative emotions.
Thank you, Adriana, for sharing that. And I believe you, not only because I've experienced it in my own life, but you've trained me very well in timeline therapy, and I use it with clients, and it is absolutely true. It is possible to let those things go from the past, and it is possible to access new solutions when we don't have that fear or worry or anxiety in our body. And you literally wrote the book about timeline therapy, and of course, very grateful to Dr. Tad James as well for creating this. And would you be willing to share with our listeners a little bit more about how those patterns, if you will, or those emotions or beliefs get stored in the body? How does that even happen? And how is it impacting their life?
So we go through life, and all of a sudden something happens, a significant emotional event of a negative nature. It could be something that happens in our own families. It could be an argument. It could be when we are young in school and we don't perform as well as we would like to, and then we don't get the results, or the teacher says to us, oh, you're just not good enough today. And so that significant emotional event of a negative nature remains almost like imprinted in the memories of the body. Now, consciously, we may not think of that ever. I mean, who remembers what happened when I was 7 or 15 or 3-year-old or something like that, consciously. However, what's happening is the unconscious mind, or the subconscious, as many people call it, that intelligence of our bodies, as I like to call it, the other part of us, of which we're not conscious of, stores all these memories in pretty much every cell of your body, not only in the brain, as initially we thought that memories are stored only in the brain. And of course, there are areas of the brain that are more prone to, short-term memories, long-term memories, and so on and so forth. However, the research done in the 60s, 50s, 60s, so that's a while ago, 80, 90 years ago, almost, 70 years ago, it started in the 40s. But the research has shown that actually the memories are almost stored, if you think of it holographically, throughout the whole body. Now that happens below the threshold of our conscious minds. Consciously, sure, we can put them out of our minds. We don't think of that, but they're still in the body. Now, all these memories of the same nature, let's pick an emotion, frustration, for instance, yeah? All instances when you ever felt frustration, the unconscious mind connects them in a chain like this, almost like in a chain, puts them together. And that in timeline therapies we call the Gestalt. We don't use Gestalt like Fritz Perls used Gestalt. In timeline therapy, we simply use the notion of Gestalt as the collection of all our memories around a certain subject, which are put together like, you can imagine a string of pearls if you wish. Yeah. And all those pearls are actually instances, as in our example, when for instance, we felt frustration. Now, timeline therapy assists one. It's a very specific process, simple process that doesn't require you experiencing the frustration again. That's very important because you don't have to relive painful memories. You don't have to relive painful events. You don't have to visit them. You don't have to feel that. But timeline therapy, through this specific process, goes back to the very, very first time when you have ever experienced that emotion. Because the unconscious mind, as I said, knows when that happened, even if you were very, very young. Like there are people who have the first time when a negative emotion happened when they are age 3 months or even in the womb. So because we know that babies feel mother's negative emotions. So when in the womb, they can feel a certain negative emotion. And so timeline therapy allows us to go back and disconnect, remove, completely eliminate the root cause, the very first time of that Gestalt of negative emotion, the string of pearls that I was talking about before. And when that's gone, all the string of negative emotions, in other words, all the negative emotions from the body, from wherever they are stored of that nature, frustration in our example, disappear. Now that's very important. Think of an analogy, think of a metaphor. If I have a weed in the garden, the weed being our negative emotion in this respect, yeah? And I cut it at the surface of the soil, it can regrow. And, you know, gardeners know this very, very, I mean, it's a well-known fact. But if I pull the weed with the roots out of the soil, obviously that weed will never grow back again because there is nothing left in the soil. So in timeline therapy with negative emotions, that's why we always go to the first event, the very first time what happened. And again, there is a specific process because the unconscious mind needs to be prompted to tell us, in other words, our conscious minds, when that event was. Not what happened, not why it happened, but when it was. Yeah. So then we pull the weed with the roots and the negative emotion disappear. There is more to it though, because once all that negative emotion from the past is gone, imagine that we can proceed in the future in a different way, because we don't hold in our bodies the memories that have this negative load on them. What we have instead, because this is also part of timeline therapy, the second thing in timeline therapy, we get the meaning and the learnings that we need to get out of the maybe painful, hurtful, frustrating, negative emotions that we experienced in the past. Now, what's important is to get that meaning, because that and what we call in timeline therapy, the learnings, because that will act as new strategies, new resources for us to utilize from now, where we are right now in the present, in the future. So we act differently, we behave differently. All of a sudden, we are capable of more empowering behaviors, and we get better results than if we're still having those negative emotions stored in the body. By the way, who doesn't? Who doesn't? It's called human life. We all go through events. We fight with our mothers, with our children, with our spouses, all of a sudden we have an argument, and you say, but it wasn't a big deal, but the negative emotions are still stored in the body. Or maybe it was a big one. Maybe something really, really bad happened to you. And, you know, that's also possible. Vered, you know, if you do coaching enough, if you teach trainings enough, you hear stories that makes your hair stand up. And it doesn't cease to amaze me sometimes what people do to other people. But it doesn't mean, this is a very important thing, it doesn't mean, as I said before, that you need to be prisoner of that thing for the rest of your life. It doesn't mean that you remain a victim. You can turn that around and transform a victim position into a success story. And more than that, not only turn around your life, which is, by the way, empowering in and of itself, you can, more than that, by your experience, you can help others as well. And that is a major thing, because that's how we help each other. That's how we support each other in the community.
Thank you, Adriana, for explaining that so clearly. And some of the people who are listening might be thinking, this sounds too good to be true. Why isn't everybody in the world doing this? And Adriana, I was one of those people at the beginning. When the first day that I was introduced to this, I thought, wow, you know, how is it possible? And then I got to experience it. And I have to tell you that this beautiful set of techniques transformed my life. I held on to a lot of shame about something from my childhood. And when we did this in partners, as you know, after we learn something, we get to practice. And I let it go in probably about 5 or 6 minutes. And it has never come back, as you said. And I know that your mission, the mission of the Pat James Company, is to transform the planet. And you are. Certainly you transformed my planet, and I, of course, in turn, helped to transform others' lives. And so, first of all, on a personal note, thank you.
That's a very gracious thing for you to say, and thank you.
And thank you for sharing this message with the world and training people on how to use this to help, create that ripple effect of empowerment because everybody deserves to feel good.
But you see, here is the thing. Ted has started with the notion of and the idea of transforming the planet. But no matter how much he worked, no matter how much we worked when we taught together, no matter how much I work now, we know fully, I know fully that alone I can't do this. So by training our students, by training people in how to do timeline therapy, by them going out and using it with themselves to change and transform their own lives and doing it with other people, it's the ripple effect. One person helps another person, helps another person, helps another person. And so it's the ripple effect. Together, indeed, we can make a difference. And so that's what's important to me. And indeed, it's as you said before, Vera, just to come back to what you said a minute ago, it's almost like people go, how is this possible? Is it really possible that, and you say, 5 to 10 minutes per negative emotion? I mean, there is so many promises. We're so used to many promises which don't come true that many people will think, oh, this is not real. It's just another one of those things, a selling point, or, one of those miracle cures. And I would like to say, no, it's not. Timeline therapy has been around for 40-some years. Why doesn't everybody know about it? Well, that I don't know. I know I'm doing my part. You are doing your part, Vered, and many of our graduates all over the world, they are doing their part. And I don't want to go down on the path of speculating why this is not well known. What I know is that it's useful, it works, it's a unique technique. It's not timeline this, timeline that, many experiments. It's timeline therapy, and it's a structural process. I said before, and I'm going to repeat, it doesn't focus on why this happened. It doesn't focus on how this happened. It's a structural process of how the negative emotions are stored in the body. So it operates at the structural level in such a way that it makes the negative emotions disappear. I'm going to keep it just very simple. But the negative emotions do disappear. And that is a transformative effect. That is a life-changing moment for people who get to experience it.
Thank you. And I also know that in addition to releasing negative emotions from the past, we can also release limiting beliefs. And
that is correct.
Yeah. And so and of course, we can also use it in the future, as you said, in terms of helping us to feel even more empowered and create the future that we truly desire. Would you be willing to share a little bit more about kind of limiting beliefs, if you will, and how timeline therapy helps to release those from the past, what we can expect when we use timeline therapy to let go of beliefs?
Sure. So when we're very, very young and we're just learned to walk, right? We have a big pampers around our behind, and we just learn to walk around the house. And with the big pampers, we don't look very stylish or very elegant, right? But we don't believe we're not good enough at that time, or I'm not tall enough, or I'm not beautiful enough, or I'm not smart. None of this is part of our consciousness at that point in time. As we grow up, we begin to compare ourselves, or maybe we hear other people telling us that we're not smart enough, we're not beautiful enough, we're not kind enough, we're not good enough, we don't deserve, and all these kind of things. So either by comparison, or we're trying to do our best, we don't succeed, we fail. Well, who doesn't? I failed so many times in my life, it's not even funny. And then all those examples that I just gave you can lead to the formation of a belief about ourselves. Because I failed, or because somebody told me, or because this person seems to be better than I am, that means, it's an equal sign there, that means I am not good enough, or I am not smart enough, or I am not beautiful enough, or I am not worthy, etc., etc., etc. These are all limiting beliefs. Why are they called limiting beliefs? Because they limit us. See, if I believe that I'm not good enough, no matter what I'm trying to achieve, what I'm trying to do, it will never be good enough, because that's what I believe. The underlying belief stops me, even if I do a great job in whatever that may be, doesn't matter. If I believe I'm not good enough, even if it's a perfect job and everybody else will tell me that I've done a perfect job, I'm still not going to believe it. So therefore, again, going back in the past, first figuring out where is the first event, the first negative significant emotional event, where that belief started, because before it started, it wasn't there. So where is that moment when that negative beliefs or limiting beliefs started, and letting it go changes all the time from that point in the past all the way to now, but more, it has positive repercussions for the future. So now, imagine I let go of that belief. It's not there anymore. I don't believe that about myself. And it's not only at the conscious level again, because at the conscious level, I may say, oh, sure, I'm good enough. But if I deep down at the unconscious level, I still have that belief, no, I'm not congruent. Yeah. So if I let it go completely from both the unconscious mind and the conscious mind, so it's so gone that now I believe that I'm okay, I'm good enough. With my good parts and bad parts, who I am is good enough. Imagine that, and now I can proceed into the future with a completely different set of mindset, first of all, but also with a different set of strategies. Then I dare to try, then I recognize when I do a good job. Hey, I've done good. I recognize and it's not like my ego goes, because not what I'm talking about, but I stop putting myself down. I stop being limited by those beliefs. So again, in this respect, timeline therapy is extremely useful as a technique, because it becomes extremely empowering for each individual. I hope that makes sense.
It does. It does. And I believe that what you're sharing is giving a lot of hope to people today who have lived with these limiting beliefs or negative emotions, sometimes their whole life, as far as they can remember. And one of the words that I often hear when I use timeline therapy with clients is that they feel liberated. Liberated. That is the word that often comes up.
Yeah, I can relate to that. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so, Adriana, before we complete, is there some kind of a tip, a tool, maybe an exercise that you might offer to our listeners to support them even more today?
Sure. Let's see about this. But if you're listening, you need to pay attention and follow the instruction precisely, because otherwise it's not going to work the way it's supposed to. So first of all, if you have any anxiety about the future, here is what I want you to do. I want you to pick one single event. You say, but I'm anxious about everything. No. I want you to pick one single event. I'm anxious about going to the supermarket or to the grocery store. That's an event, yeah? Pick something, one single, very specific event. Think of one very specific event over which you thought you were anxious. Yeah, so you can stop here when you're listening. So if you want to have time to think of that, but be sure you pick a very specific single event. So I assume by this time you got that one. And so as you think of it now, I assume you feel anxiety. Or if you don't call it anxiety, maybe you are extremely worried or afraid of. Whatever your words are, yeah, it's the same feeling. Good. Now I want you to imagine, simply imagine, like you imagine, you close your eyes and you imagine a flower, or you imagine a car, or you imagine the ocean. Just like that. I want you to imagine that you are going into the future well after the event has ended. But I want you to imagine that event turning out the way you want it, turning out successfully for you. It's imagination, so you can imagine whatever you want, yeah? So if you're imagining it turning out wrongly, oh my God, this is what's going to happen, and what if that's going to happen? Forget about that for the moment. And imagine if you were to it's an imagination, yeah? Imagine that it has turned out the best you can imagine for yourself. Beyond any belief. Wow. And you say, wow, it turned out so good for me. What would that be for you? The best it could be for you. And I want you to go out in the future after the event has totally finished, it's ended, it's done, it's over with. It could be 15 minutes after the successful completion of that event, or it could be one day after, up to you. But imagine it turning out the best, absolutely successfully for you. But you have to do that. You have to imagine it turning out. You are amazed how well it turned out. You said, I didn't believe it's going to be this way. And look how it turned out so well. It turned out fantastic for me. And hold that image and imagine that turning out totally successfully for you. Totally the way you want it. Better than you imagine. Exactly the way you think it's going to be the best for you. And there in the future, as you look toward now, in your imagination, it's all imagination. Yeah? Imagine you're in the future after the successful completion of that event. And as you are to look toward now from the future, my question to you is now, where is that anxiety or that worry or that fear of the future? Imagine it successfully, otherwise you can't do it. After the event has finished, the successful completion of that event has happened, you are in the future. And you're holding in your mind that image of this event turning out so well, so perfect for you, better than you even thought of, totally successfully the way you want it. The question is now, where is that old anxiety? Where did it go? And if you have a smile on your face, it went away. And then imagine again, you're coming all the way back to now. You are in your body, you are in the now, in the present moment, totally back in your body. And if your eyes were closed, open them. If your eyes were open, keep them open. And welcome back. So this is a little technique. I know it's a little out of context because we teach it in the context of the other timeline therapy techniques. But if you followed my instructions correctly, and if you really, really imagined that event over which you thought you were anxious turning out totally successfully for you, the anxiety must be gone. So I hope this helps a little, at least, a part of your listeners. And I just wanted to show you that timeline therapy is not difficult, it's not arduous, it's not hard, it's not painful, and it's amazing in its simplicity. Because again, behind this technique, and Vered, I know you know this, it's a structural process, and it goes to how we hold and encode the negative emotions inside our neurology, in the neurology of the body, in every cell of the body, how the memories are stored holographically, and how that impacts our lives and how we can change it.
Thank you so much, Adriana, for sharing with us all that you shared, for sharing this such a powerful technique with us. I personally went along with it, and oh my goodness, the anxiety went away, and so grateful to you. How can people learn?
It's my absolute pleasure. That's what I do. That's where my passion is. That's where I put all my energy, and I do it in a way, in a very selfish manner. It fills my heart when I see people changing their lives. I do it because it fills my heart with joy, and I go to bed at night and I go, okay, I've done a good job today. And then tomorrow is a new day of training, and day after tomorrow is a new day of training. And then I see other people change their lives and take this with them and help others, help themselves and help others, help their children, their family members, their friends. And they get success not only in their personal lives, but also their business, their ability to make money, their ability to be healthier. That all improves because everything's interconnected. So that's how it is. Yes, I'm sorry I interrupted you.
Oh my goodness, I'm so grateful for you. Thank you for your time today. I know you are a busy woman, a very successful woman, and I would like for people to know how to get in touch with you, how to learn more about the training programs that you offer as part of the Todd James Company, because I truly believe that this is life-changing, this and of course everything else that you teach. How can we learn more about that?
So our website is nlpcoaching.com, but we're present on social media. We're present on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, and I plan a series of new videos now, which I'm going to launch. But join our group called Transform the Planet on Facebook. Join us, and we're very happy to see you there. And Vered, I want to say thank you for taking the trainings and using them to empower others, to help others. You're one of our very successful graduates, and you're doing a great job.
Thank you.